Let me start by introducing our guest, Mayor Jonathan Weinberg. Jonathan was elected to the Los Altos City Council in 2020 and is serving as the city's mayor in 2024. Community involvement has always been an important value for Jonathan. In 2015, he was appointed to the city's Parks and Recreation Commission, where he served until his election to the council. Jonathan and his wife Edith moved to Los Altos in 2009. Their son Noah is a sophomore at Los Altos High School, and their daughter Emma is an eighth grader at Gideon Hosner Jewish Day School in Palo Alto. A Bay Area native, Jonathan was born and raised in Oakland. He attended college in Southern California and received his law degree from Hastings College of Law in 2001. Jonathan has practiced law for more than 20 years and is now a partner with the law firm Finkelstein and Fuji in San Mateo. Hopefully, I got that pronunciation right. Jonathan's practice focuses on real estate law and trust and probate law. An avid fan of the Oakland A's, Jonathan enjoys going to as many baseball games as he can. He also enjoys traveling with his family, listening to music, and has recently started to explore the world of bourbon and other American whiskeys. Please join me in welcoming Mayor Jonathan Weinberg this morning. Good morning, Jonathan. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. It's so good to see you. We actually have some sunshine outside. Maybe the weatherman's no rain forecast will actually work today as opposed to yesterday. So we'll dive into some questions if that's okay, as usual. So you've been serving on council for a little over 3 years now, and I'm curious how your experience compares to your expectations before serving on council. And now that you're mayor, does that role feel any different than being a council member?
Well, thank you very much. Let me start off by saying good morning to everyone, and thank you to LACC for the invitation to come and speak this morning. I really appreciate it. The experience of serving on council has been very rewarding. I care very deeply about the city, and I think everyone on the Zoom call, there are many faces I recognize, also care very deeply about Los Altos and our surrounding communities. I know Linda Swan feels the same way about the Hills as Sally and I, and the other council members feel about Los Altos. So it really is. I know it's cliche to say, but it's an honor to have been elected by the residents of the city to have an opportunity to represent them. And you know, the trust that the community has placed in me, like I said, it's also an honor, but it's also something that weighs on me as well. I always kind of knew intellectually, but now that I'm on council and I've had 3+ years of experience, I recognize that our decisions affect lives. And unfortunately, sometimes politics and policymaking really is a zero-sum game. I'm someone who believes that we're better off when we expand the pie and we try to get everyone working on the same page and making it so that people think things kind of work out better. The best type of a settlement in a lawsuit is one where everybody gets something out of it and is able to move on with their lives. But sometimes you're allocating scarce resources. And like I said, sometimes that means that you're playing a zero-sum game. And it means that you're not going to be able to solve all the problems in a way that's going to make everyone walk away feeling satisfied. I thought I already knew what the city council did when I was running for office, but having been on the council now for 3 years, I have a much better understanding of what it is we do and how cities work. The city council, the politicians, we're the ones who set policy for the city. And then it is our staff who ultimately takes that policy direction on the top scale and actually implements it through the operations of the city. And for a city to function well, and I think right now Los Altos does function well, we have to have a council that is willing to work together, willing to work professionally, and willing to give clear direction. And we also have to have a staff that the council can trust and that is dedicated to implementing that policy in an efficient and equitable manner. So that's really what I've come to learn being on council so far.
Great. And what about the distinction now that you're mayor? Have you found that the workload has increased dramatically, or your focus has changed?
I wouldn't say that the focus has changed. The workload certainly is more for the mayor than it is for the other council members. Um, I gave an interview to the town crier at the end of last year, and one of the questions was, "What does the mayor do?" And my answer was, "Well, the mayor needs to act as a facilitator," and that's absolutely true. And there's a lot of work in facilitating. People come to the mayor often before they come to other council members. And I'm not able to solve everyone's problem. But what I am able to do is figure out what their issue is and how the city can best address it and who in the city they need to talk to in order to convey their problem, get information, have an exchange of information, and then work towards solutions to any problems that are out there. It's also the mayor's responsibility to set the agenda. And staff, of course, does a lot of work in organizing what the council wants to talk about, what are the things that we have to talk about according to law. But time management is a crucial aspect of city government. And setting our agendas for our weekly meetings is an important role. And that falls on the mayor's shoulders. So on the one hand, I want to keep us moving. I don't want us to have council meetings that go till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. But at the same time, we've got to get our work done. We've got to do the public's business. So it's a challenge.
Right. They're great answers. Thank you. So we're about a month into 2024, and many issues are facing the city of Los Altos in this coming year. I'm curious what you view as the biggest challenges in front of us for 2024.
So I think the biggest challenges in front of us are improving our public safety infrastructure. We also need to improve mobile connectivity, both downtown and throughout the rest of the city. And frankly, we also need to catch up on a lot of deferred maintenance to our streets and other city infrastructure.
Okay, great. Well, let's dive into one of those. There's been lots of discussion and debate on the police and fire facilities in Los Altos, and seems like we've known about this for many years with the police department flooding and the roofs leaking, and et cetera, et cetera. And I know you've been looking at it since you've been on council. Can you maybe give us a summary of where we are now and what you think we need to do moving forward?
Sure, thank you for the question. Um, when I was first elected to the council, before I actually took my office, former police chief Andy Galea invited me to take a tour of the police station. Obviously, I accepted it, and I was absolutely shocked by what I saw. Frankly, the police station it's in reasonable repair for a 60-plus-year-old building, but it is no longer serving the community. And its condition, I believe, poses a risk to our public safety. The reality is that this is a building that was constructed, again, 60 years ago. There's been a lot of deferred maintenance. And it was built at a time when the city was smaller. So we have 32,000 people now. We're using a lot more technology. We have a police station that does not have air conditioning, even though it gets very hot here during the summers. My understanding is, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, the council okayed a CIP to install air conditioning into the police station. And when the contractor came out to start the job, he looked at the building and said, I can go ahead and do this, and I'll stand by my quote to put the air conditioning in. But if I open up the wall and I find out that there's asbestos in there, now your $2 million project is going to be a $10 or $15 million project. So that was not in the budget at the time, and the council said, hold off. And unfortunately, kind of a pattern that the city has had for some decades now, maintenance just kind of got deferred. It's no secret that the police station basement floods, and our 911 servers and other technology are in that basement. They are quite literally sitting on wooden pallets in case it floods down there, and that's the protection that the elevation that those machines have in order to stay safe. Simply put, the police station is not adequate for the needs of the city. Policing is done very differently than when the police station was built. The police, no one's going to question that the police are important to the city. They're the ones that help protect us. They are our first responders. If we want to have the best police department that we possibly can, then we need to invest in the department. We need to give them the tools that they need to serve us, and we need to give them a facility that is adequate for everything that they do, everything that they have to do in order to comply with their own regulations, with the law, and ultimately to provide great services to the city. Our fire stations, they're not in as bad disrepair as the police station, but they also have serious problems. I think that the roofs leak in both of the buildings. Each of them needs several million dollars in repair. And again, it comes down to we want to show our first responders that we value them, and we need to give tools and facilities to the people that serve us so that they can perform their jobs. And frankly, the time really has come, I believe, for the city to bite the proverbial bullet, understand and recognize that our first responders are critically important, and make the effort to go ahead and move forward with either building a new police station or effecting repairs, maybe expanding it. We're going to look at a lot of different options, but we've got to put that investment into our first responders, because that is an investment in public safety.
Totally agree, and thank you for that. Do you see this, reaching a decision point this year, or where do you think we are in that process?
My goal, my primary goal this year is for the city to reach a decision point on that. We're taking a phased approach. So right now, city staff is in the process of essentially doing a revised facility analysis, identify all the existing problems and the current state of disrepair in all three of those buildings, and then identify what is needed in terms of either a repair or a replacement. So first, here's the problem. Second phase, here are the options we have to fix the problem. Here are the costs that are associated with taking that action. The third phase is going to be for the council and the community to use that information to make a decision about what capital improvements we actually want to commit ourselves to. And then the final phase is going to have to be to identify how we're going to fund those decisions.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's turn to recent events. So we've been through a busy few weeks of storms, lots of trees down and power outages, and people just trying to put everything back together after a couple of weeks. And you mentioned previously, this either late last year or early this year, that you wanted to focus this year on emergency preparedness. I think it was back in December when you came into office. So how do you think we did as a city through this recent batch of storms, and what more can we do to prepare for the next storm?
So overall, I think city staff did pretty good this year. We're not out of the woods yet, so to speak. I think that there's going to be more storms that are going to hit us before we reach the spring. But certainly there was far less disruption this year than there was last year. Now, of course, to be fair, the storm this year, we only had one atmospheric river so far. And I think it was not as bad as the atmospheric rivers that kept hitting us one after the other last year. But the city, I think, what was left, the city was operational more consistently this year than last year. We were very quick to respond. CSAP was very quick to respond to down trees, power outages, communicating with PG&E and our other partners, and making sure that utilities were restored as quickly as possible. So I think that the city has done good so far this year. And part of it is that I think city staff is frankly, they're working at a higher level. We have very good city staff. And part of that is because I think we learned a lot of lessons from last year. You go through a catastrophe and you're able to look back on it after it's over and say, okay, here's what we did well. Here are opportunities to improve. And I think that the city staff really has taken those opportunities to improve the level of services that they're giving us. And that's why the city was able to recover much more quickly from this atmospheric river than the last one. But ultimately, the message that I want to get out to the residents of Los Altos and our broader community is that we have to take responsibility ourselves when those emergencies come. It's our own responsibility to be prepared for an emergency. And taking the time, spending the resources necessary, whether it's time, maybe a little bit of investment, financial investment, but putting in that effort now can really pay off huge dividends. I mean, it could be life and death, literally, when it comes to being ready for that next emergency. Because we all know, and again, it's another cliche, it's not a question of if, but when we're going to be hit with another catastrophe, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's flooding, whether it's a wildfire. We all love living in California, but those are risks that we take when we live in California. And our first responders do a great job, they really do. But ultimately, we all have to take responsibility for our own safety. So be prepared and be informed. Those are the two underpinnings of the strong root that I say builds our community. And that root being ready means us being ready as a community for that next catastrophe that's going to hit. Some of the messages that I want to push out this year are what to expect when that catastrophe does hit. If there is a terrible catastrophe, the first responders are going to start off by engaging in triage. God forbid it happens and someone in your family has a broken bone. The police, the fire department, they could be driving by, you're trying to flag them down. They cannot stop and give first aid. Their immediate responsibility may be to continue touring the city to see if there are down power lines, fires, or other emergencies that need more immediate attention. That's why we have to be ready to take care of ourselves, for at least a good week or so. Have provisions, have clean water, have food, have first aid kits available, and know your neighbors too. Be ready to check on your neighbors, give them the help that they're going to need. Hopefully they can give you help that you're going to need from them. This is how we all come together as a community. And I really think that history has shown that Americans, and probably everyone in the world, were at our very best when there was a shared catastrophe. But we're able to prevent damage, or emotional damage, physical damage, loss of life, when we're actually ready for that emergency. Throughout the year, I am going to share tips and resources that are available. The good news is that there are a lot of resources that are available. County Fire, who provides our fire services, they have a website devoted to emergency preparedness. The city has a pretty good website as well. And the city is offering opportunities for people to get involved and start taking responsibility for their own well-being. I know next Tuesday, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm preparing for a council meeting, but there is a class being offered, and I think the city in conjunction with Resilient Los Altos. Topic is preparing for power outages. I mean, you can't get more topical than that, right? We just came out of an atmospheric river. I know a lot of people lost power. Fortunately, it was not as long as last year, but there are opportunities out there for people to be prepared. Now, the flip side of that is the city has a responsibility to work with PG&E and our other utilities to try to make sure that we are getting our power back on as quickly as possible. But there are times where it's just not going to happen as quickly as everyone wants. And these classes that are being offered by Resilient Los Altos in conjunction with the city are great ways for people to learn what to expect and how to be prepared. And if anyone's interested in it, go to the city's the Parks and Recreation Department. You can sign up for it. It's a class listed in our catalog, and there are other classes that are coming up later in the year.
Great. Very comprehensive thoughts there. Thank you. So let's turn to the aspects of you serving in council. I'm curious, what are the best and most challenging aspects of serving as council member and mayor?
Well, I think for me, the best part of serving on council and being mayor is knowing that I'm having a positive effect on my community and making Los Altos a better place for my neighbors, my family, my kids, and future generations that are going to come here. I know that 20 years from now, I'm going to be able to drive around town and say, hey, I had a say in that in putting the cycle track on Almond that kids are still using. I had an effect in making sure that we had better cellular connectivity downtown. That it matters to me, and it, forgive me if it sounds a little bit vain, but it's important for me to know that I'm contributing to the community, and that I really believe that my colleagues and I are going to be able to look back on our work and say that we had a positive effect. I also really enjoy meeting different segments of the community, including people with interests that I never recognized or thought about before. I think a great example of that would be the discussion that we had regarding the strife in the Middle East. This is back in November and December. I met with a lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives, and I have conversations that are continuing today with people with whom I don't necessarily agree, but are very smart, very passionate, and share a desire in moving forward in understanding and making sure that we live in a welcoming community for everyone. That's been very, very rewarding. I've really enjoyed that. The most challenging part of serving on council, I got to go back to allocating scarce resources. There are so many things that we want to do. And the city manager, when he started here, he had a saying, which was, as a city, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. And that's another way of saying that we have scarce resources and we can't allocate them to everything we want to do. If you look at our capital improvement plan, our schedule of different projects, it's 5 or 6 pages, I think, in small type. And every one of those projects has merit, and they're all exciting, and they're all going to be a benefit to the community if and when they get accomplished. But we only have a budget of $47 million. And that's a lot of money, but it's not enough money to do everything that we want to do. And it's a challenge to figure out where we're going to put that money and where we're not. And then another challenge, which I think kind of coincides with that, is that even though I and my colleagues all put our very best effort into moving the city forward, and we all vote our conscience, we educate ourselves, we make decisions, which is what the voters have trusted us to do. There are still going to be people that are disappointed. There are people who are going to be upset at the decisions we make. There are people who are not going to, frankly, when they get disappointed, they start to lose trust. And it's upsetting and disappointing to me, but I get it. Politics is an emotional area. We're talking about public policy. We're talking about shaping what government does and the directions that it's going to take. And some people are going to be very upset with some of the decisions that we make. And because we're making decisions that they don't like, they're going to lose trust in us. And frankly, it's hard for me to accept that because I want to work in a way that makes everyone feel like they're getting something, or at least that they have been heard and understood. But I'm not always able to do that.
Great. I think many of the attendees today know how much time all of you put in for your $300 stipend per month, which is for those who don't know, is a topic that's currently under consideration. I think I calculated the hourly wage at some point, and it was not very good. So just thank you for all that, all the work that all of you do. We
Thank you for
appreciate it,
saying that.
of course. So let's see. We talked about a couple of the issues, with the first responders and emergency preparedness, but there are many other challenges in front of us. I'd love to have you walk through a few of the other challenges ahead in 2024 and share your thoughts.
Sure. Yeah, I think there are some other big issues we haven't talked about yet that are going to be popping up this year. I believe that the EIR, the Environmental Impact Report on Halsey House, is going to come out a little bit later this year. And then the council is going to have to tussle with what we want to do with Halsey House. We are expecting the Los Altos Stage Company some point this year to come back and let us know about their campaign. It's not really a capital campaign at this point, but really we want to see whether or not a capital campaign would be successful. So I'm looking forward to getting that information because I think that will help inform the council what direction we want to take with respect to the possibility of a theater downtown. The housing element, there's a program in the housing element that essentially says 3 parking lots are going to get repurposed. One of them is going to end up being below market rate housing project. Another parking lot will probably become a park with parking underneath. And then the third one may or may not become a theater. There may be some other resource there as well. But I think that I believe the RFP for the below market rate housing project has probably already gone out. That this is something that's going to be coming back to the council later this year and is really going to shape what downtown is going to look like for generations. So those are some big issues that are coming up.
Great. Well, we're running ahead on time. Any closing thoughts or remarks before we open it up to audience questions?
Sure. One point that I want everyone that I like to make to everyone is that if council is performing well, it's not because of the mayor, it's not because of the city manager, it's not because of any one person. If the council is running well, and if the city is running well, it's because a collective decision has been made by a team of people to serve our community in a collaborative and a professional manner. I do believe right now that the city is running well. And it's because the 5 of us on the city council have made that commitment to each other, to the voters, to our broader community, that we want to work together, that we want to work well, that we want to move forward. And that doesn't mean that we all think the same. It doesn't mean we all vote the same. It doesn't mean we all have the same ideas. But it does mean that we have reasonable discussions, that when someone loses a vote, they accept it because it's part of the process. And we move forward standing behind the policy decisions that the council has made. And then the council takes a step back and doesn't try to micromanage staff. Let staff do their job. Again, the council sees where the city is going. We see what staff is doing, and every one of us on council has an opportunity to communicate with staff. The city manager is very good about having an open door policy, not just with the council, but with the community. Which brings me kind of to the last part of this troika. So you have the council, you have the staff. Most importantly, we have the community. Los Altos, I think, is really blessed with an electorate, with a business community, with all the stakeholders who are very engaged and are very smart and all share the council's desire to move the city forward in a positive way. You know, we on the council cannot serve the community if the community does not communicate to us what are their concerns. And I know that my colleagues and I all have these open door policies. We're all willing to listen, and get sometimes some very good, interesting ideas from the community. And sometimes there are challenges that the community wants the city to address that maybe we're not able to because of scarce resources, or the law doesn't allow us to do something that some people want to do. I mean, there are lots of challenges that always have to be overcome. But when staff, the city council, and the community are all committed to working together, positive results happen. And that's what's happening here.
Great. Well, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. I think super comprehensive answers. So we appreciate that. We're going to open it up now to the attendees for questions. As always, please raise your virtual hand and I'll call on you. And a reminder, one question per person and no speeches, please. Any takers? I'm not seeing any hands so far. There we go. Mark has the first question. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you, Jonathan, and thanks to the city staff. I do think that the balance is working well. I'm interested in your thoughts on how making the downtown survive and thrive with the challenges that it's facing. And can you go into a little more detail about what's going on with getting the better Wi-Fi and cell service downtown?
Yeah, Mark, thank you for the question. The city is coming out of a period of tussling with cellular providers. And I think that we have turned the corner. We're extracting ourselves from some unfortunate litigation. Now, the city, of course, cannot compel AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile to erect the infrastructure that they need in order to provide better cellular communication. But what the city can do is make sure that our policies, that our municipal code serves the interests of the residents first and foremost, but doesn't prevent those providers from being able to establish the infrastructure that they need. So forgive me, Mark, I know your question was a little bit broader than that. That has to do with cellular connectivity. Was there? I feel like I'm missing part of your question though.
No, I think just the acknowledgement that we may need to tweak our some of our past policies in order to get where we want to go.
Yeah, the council is aware of that, and I think the council has actually given direction to staff to take a closer look at that and to come back to council with some ideas and some proposed modifications. And I would expect that to happen probably this quarter, certainly before mid-year.
Thank you.
Great. Looks like Jim has his hand raised. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This is related to the previous question, actually. There's been talk about AT&T discontinuing the offering of plain old telephone service, analog lines throughout the state. And with that, that's likely to put a lot more pressure on the cellular infrastructure, especially in emergencies. Is the city, I hear a lot of talk about the city providing better cellular service downtown. What is the thought about trying to improve cellular service throughout the city and not just downtown?
I'm going to give you a similar answer, which is we want to make it easier for cellular companies to be able to install their infrastructure in a way that is sensible and is safe and will serve the interests of the residents. AT&T, I believe, has submitted applications for 12 new small cell towers, and I believe that all those applications were approved. So now it's simply a matter of AT&T getting the installation of those small cell towers on their schedule to actually put them in. I believe almost all, if not all of them, are in the northern part of the city. T-Mobile, I think, also has an application, but it may only be for one. Once my feeling is that once the mobile companies start bringing their infrastructure current in parts of the city, they're then going to be ready to move forward with doing it throughout the rest of the city. And I don't know why AT&T focused on North Los Altos as opposed to South Los Altos or the middle of the city, but that's where they made their applications. And they submitted applications years ago, and the city rejected them, and that led to a lot of litigation. I think we're just about past all that. The city now wants to work collaboratively with the cellular companies, and it's not because there's any favor to the cellular companies, but they're providing a resource that our community needs. And it all comes back, in my opinion, it all comes back to being to community safety. The primary purpose of government, I think, has to be public safety. And in this day and age, cellular communications, mobile communications is just as important to public safety as a police department or a fire department.
All right. Thanks, Jim. Let's turn it over to Harry.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. And there are several members of the Resilient Los Altos volunteers here, so I'll ask a question that maybe others are thinking about or would like to hear about. You talked about the latest storms and the need for citizens to do their thing in terms of preparedness, and that's what we're all about with Resilient Los Altos. We try, our main focus is neighbors helping neighbors and building community. So that's our first and primary focus, but we also try to connect with and collaborate with city council, with city staff as well. And so my question is, how are we doing on that? We try to communicate with city staff when we have something useful to say and communicate or ask, but we try to keep that to a low level. And so I'm interested for all of Resilient Los Altos, how are we doing on that, and where can we do better in our communication with primarily city staff, city council, those two functions?
Thanks for the question, Harry. And I'm gonna have to give that a little bit of thought. I think one thing that I can say right off the bat is, if you haven't done so already, then Resilient Los Altos ought to set up a meeting with our new police captain, Joe Ledoux. He's taking on the hat of operations for the police department, and that includes emergency preparedness. And I know that he's got some ideas of some things he wants to do. So he's gonna the police department is going to modify at least one of its cruisers to be more effective during an emergency and being able to address the public. But much of our emergency preparedness, of course, comes through the police department. So I would make that connection as quickly as possible. He is a very energetic person. I actually had coffee with him yesterday morning. He's got a lot of ideas. He comes from the East Bay, from Berkeley, so I know they've done a lot of things over there. I would go there. I really would. In general, if you have an idea, if you have an issue that you want to address with staff, I think our staff is pretty receptive to those. And of course, Harry, you and anyone else can always come to me, and I think can always come to any member of the council and let us know if there's something that we should be aware of, and we can discuss how to move forward with addressing it.
Thank you for that, Jonathan. And just for info, we've reached out already to Joe, and some of the leadership group of Resilient Los Altos have met him, and we're trying to engage just as you suggest. And
Good.
we do also interact some with Sonia Lee for PIO and a couple of the other council members on things like the alerts that are going out by the city. They did a really, really good job of putting out the alerts in advance of this storm, and then status updates. It was really, really good, especially the power outage on Camellia Way. Really nice job.
Thank you. And a big challenge that we're having, I think, is simply letting people know what are the resources that are out there. I think the whole city council got an email from someone who was very concerned that during the last atmospheric river, the city was not getting information out. And the city manager responded and said, well, we're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, there's Nixle, there's Alert SCC. And the person said, oh, I wasn't aware that we had all of those. I hadn't been following all of those. So getting people to know that those resources are out there, and then going further, actually giving them the incentive that they need to sign up for them and to check them or subscribe to them. That's those are huge obstacles to overcome, but ultimately they require very little effort on the part of people, but have such a huge payoff.
Great. Thanks for the question, Harry. Let's go to Los Alton of the Year Emeritus, Gary Hedden.
Thank you, Joe, and good morning, Mayor. Circling back to the storm damage recently, a lot of it was from trees falling down. So the question is, has the city budget been increased to do preventive maintenance, to go out and inspect for trees that maybe need pruning or even removed before the storms hit?
That's a great question. And actually, I don't know if the city manager is going to be watching this later, but I'm talking with him later. It's on my agenda. My biggest fear for the city of Los Altos is that we have so many dead trees, so much dead foliage, that God forbid a wildfire or any type of a fire hits the city, there is so much fuel for the city to really suffer a catastrophe. And I have not been able to figure out yet how to address that. So one of the things that I want to talk about with the city manager later today is what can we do to incentivize people to get rid of dead trees, to get rid of dead foliage, because it's such a danger, not just to individual property owners, but to neighbors. I mean, the entire city. Fire is such a scary, dangerous thing. When it gets out of control, it's uncontrollable. It will do a lot of damage. So Gary, I'm glad that you brought it up. I remember when I first found out about the 527 trees program, I said, well, are you targeting dead trees to replace with new trees? And I mean, and the answer was no, which is perfectly fair. And I'm glad that the 500 tree program is in place. But ever since we had that conversation, I've been thinking about how do we get rid of the dead trees? How do we get rid of the dead foliage? I think the city does an adequate job in pruning things that need to be pruned and cutting back cutting back trees and bushes and getting rid of dead ones. But we've got to increase that to the rest of the city, to residents. We have to make it worthwhile. We have to make it as easy as possible. And frankly, the reality is if we put up barriers in terms of cost and bureaucracy, it's going to happen less and less. And it's a huge danger. And there's a bit of a conflict too, because if you make it too easy for people to remove trees and bushes, then you're going to start to lose some of the urban canopy. And we don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want to lose healthy trees. We don't want to lose healthy bushes and plants.
Yeah, that's right.
But we do want to give people the incentive and to make it easy for them to take care of their own property.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Gary. We've got 2 hands up. I'd ask if anyone else is thinking of raising their hand, do it now, just so I can manage the remainder of the time as opposed to the drip, drip, drip approach, so we can get Jonathan on his way. Let's turn it over to Sue Russell.
Yeah, Jonathan, with regard to the downtown parking garage that you're referencing, how do you think the city's going to be able to pay for that?
I don't know. And really, until we have a project in front of us, we're not going to be able to answer that question. This is still conceptual. If you're going to push me on it and make me predict the future, I think that the city is going to adopt a parking in lieu program, and we would likely use funds out of that to finance a parking structure, hopefully fully or at least substantially. But we're a long way from that still.
All right, thanks, Sue. And looks like our last question is going to be from Larry Lang. Make it a good one, Larry.
Thanks, and thank you, Jonathan, for joining us this morning, and thank you for your service to the city. This actually sort of can't be a question because it's about the ongoing lawsuits, but I thought the others on the call might be interested in this, that the last remaining lawsuit with AT&T Singular came out of abeyance on Monday, which I don't know, but I anticipate any progress is good progress. It's good to see that moving along. So watching carefully, and also looking forward to putting in my public information request about the costs when the thing is finally settled.
All right. Well, we'll not force Jonathan to opine on that. But thanks for the info, and look forward to the analysis once you get the data. So we've got a couple minutes left. One last bonus question. Anybody have a good one? Otherwise, I'll wrap it up. Oh, there's Gary. All right, go for it, Gary. Last one.
Another way to solve the tree problem where they're knocking down power lines is underground the power lines. So I know that's really expensive, but maybe with, again, some incentives to homeowners to encourage them to do that, or fund it out of the value of homes so it doesn't cost them money out of their pocket right now. I don't know. It seems like there might be some creative ways to do that, and it would really be beautiful to get those ugly wires down out of the. So what do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. It's something that we have addressed with PG&E, and PG&E has said there's money to underground, but right now we're focusing on undergrounding in Northern California, where we have giant power lines, where we've had those giant fires, because that's where the biggest danger is. I'm going to say something that I suspect I will not be alone in. I can't stand PG&E. Once upon a time, I said I consider PG. I hold PG&E in almost as low esteem as I do insurance companies. I think now I hold them in even lower esteem, and I wish that we had the tools to be able to move away from PG&E, or find an alternative source of electricity and natural gas, or that we simply had enough might to be able to get PG&E to pay attention to us. And I haven't seen that yet. The city of Los Altos, we could form our own public utility, but we're still going to ultimately be getting gas and electricity off of PG&E's grid. Enron tried this. City of Palo Alto makes it work, but I think we would not solve anything. We would just be charging more money, and we would have a more palatable logo than the PG&E logo. We lost, even though the atmospheric river was not as bad last week as it was last year, we still had residents without power, some for hours, some for days. It wasn't just Los Altos. When Cupertino got hit, I think the Hills got hit. I heard on the radio like 82,000 people in the South Bay were without power at one point. So it's not just a Los Altos thing. But the point is that Los Altos does not have the heft to be able to tell PG&E you need to have alternative ways and backups and redundant systems to make sure this does not happen to us. PG&E needs to do that, not just for Los Altos, they need to do that for the entire, they need to do that for their entire service area. Frankly, they're a terrible company, you know. Aaron Brockovich was not just a feel good for the little guy against PG&E. I mean, that's something that really happened. And PG&E, I think they spent a lot of money on public relations, and they have these commercials, and you know, my dad is doing these wonder. I mean, they have great marketing and they have great PR. I don't care about that. I don't think anyone on this call cares about that. I think we care about having safe and uninterrupted service. I have not figured out how to get there. I mean, PG&E doesn't even return our calls very quickly when city staff calls them. It's a huge problem that again goes back to PG&E kind of knows that there's not a lot we can do. So yes, we'll go to our state assembly member, our state senator to help us. And there's the PUC. I mean, there are tools that we have, but at the end of the day, it's still PG&E that's providing all those services to us, and there's no other alternative. And that really puts us in a position where I'd love to be able to move on from them. I'd love to be able to maybe punch them in the nose a little bit, like I feel like they're doing to Los Altos. I just haven't figured out how we can do that to obtain a positive result.
Wow, I didn't know we'd be making news today. I look forward to the Palo Alto Daily Post article tomorrow. Ginny, only because it's you, let's go with another last question. Go ahead, quickly.
30 seconds, 27 seconds, Jonathan. Parklet's new law, AB 413 maybe, on 20 feet back from the curb. Who's going to pace those off and bring our city into compliance with the new law?
City staff, Anthony Carnasica, who is the assistant to the city manager, also really takes the lead when it comes to downtown. So I think that's going to fall on his shoulders.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, we made it in on time. Just a few announcements. Next meeting is in 2 weeks, Friday, February 23rd, from 8:30 to 9:30. Please join us for a discussion entitled El Camino Real Construction in 2024 with Aida Fairman, City of Los Altos Public Works Director, and Nick Sala, Caltrans Project Management District Division Chief. I hope Jonathan will be there to ask some tough questions for us. That would be great. And if you'd like to be added to the LACC mailing list, please send an email to info@losaltoscommunitycoalition.org. Kim will be already posted that into the chat. And a big thank you, as always, to Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation for providing LACC with financial and in-kind support. Thank you once again, Jonathan. Great discussion, and we'll look forward to seeing everybody in a few weeks.
Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much to the steering committee of LACC, and thank you to everyone else. It was great to see you.